My name is Michelle. I'm 19. I thought I was just moving into a new apartment. I was wrong. What I woke up to behind that hidden door, it was pure terror. And it's still happening. The first sensation was the profound, almost unnerving softness. Not the familiar yielding of my mattress that cradled me into sleep, but a dense, pulsing sponginess that seemed to resonate with a low, internal hum. It felt organic, alive. A scent, cloyingly sweet and overwhelmingly damp, like a forgotten basement choked with overripe fruit left to fester for decades, pricked at my nostrils, a stark contrast to the crisp morning air I usually woke to. My eyes fluttered open, expecting the familiar, comforting patterns of shadows cast by my bedroom ceiling. Instead, I was met with a uniform, pale yellow, not a paint, but a texture that defied logic, resembling the inside of a vast, hollowed-out, bioluminescent gourd. Panic, a cold, sharp shard, pierced through the grogginess, jolting me fully awake. This was not my room. This was not my house. The bed beneath me was a cushioned mound, a part of the very architecture, pulsing faintly with that unsettling, resonant hum. The walls, if you could call them that, weren't constructed of plaster and wood. They were curved, fleshy surfaces that seemed to breathe with a slow, rhythmic expansion and contraction, as if I were inside a colossal, living organism. There were no corners, no straight lines, no edges, just a seamless, unnerving curvature that disoriented my sense of space and direction, making the very concept of forward feel unstable. Where was I? How had I arrived in this impossible place? My mind, usually a reliable navigator, struggled to grasp any solid ground. I desperately replayed the previous evening, the late hours spent hunched over my desk, the satisfying fatigue, the familiar ritual of locking my apartment door, the quiet click of the latch as I surrendered to sleep. Nothing unusual. Nothing that could explain this grotesque transmogrification of my reality. Driven by an instinct older than thought, a primal need to escape, I pushed myself off the pulsing mound. My bare feet sank slightly into the floor, a strange, resilient substance that yielded like thick, cool mud but offered a peculiar, almost supportive resistance. I stumbled forward, my hands instinctively reaching out, grasping for something solid, something familiar, a doorknob, a picture frame, anything to anchor me. My fingers brushed against a surface that felt vaguely like wood, but unnaturally warm, impossibly smooth, with a texture that seemed to subtly shift and writhe beneath my touch, as if alive. It was a doorframe, I realized, an exact replica of the one leading from my hallway into my study. Yet, as I pushed against it, expecting the familiar resistance, it yielded with an almost silent, welcoming sigh, swinging inward as if anticipating my arrival. Beyond it lay, my kitchen. Or rather, a perfect, terrifyingly precise imitation. The worn linoleum pattern, the subtle discoloration around the drain of the sink, the chipped ceramic mug on the counter that I always used for my morning coffee, the faint ring stain on the wood where I habitually left it, it was all there, rendered with an uncanny fidelity. But the light filtering in was wrong. It wasn't the warm, angled sunlight of morning, but a soft, diffused luminescence that seemed to emanate from the very air itself, casting no shadows, giving everything a surreal, deeply unsettling dreamlike quality. I rushed to the window, my breath catching in my throat, desperate for a glimpse of the outside world, a street, a familiar tree, anything that tethered me to sanity. Instead, my gaze met more of the same pulsating yellow walls, stretching endlessly, impossibly, in every direction. No sky, no horizon, just the disorienting, alien geometry of this impossible construct. Disorientation coalesced into a gnawing, icy dread. Every exit I found, a replica of my living room door, my bathroom entrance, even the back door leading to the non-existent garden, led only to another perfectly rendered, yet subtly wrong, section of this looping, echoing house. My armchair, identical to mine down to the slight wear on the left armrest, sat in the replicated living room. But it felt wrong. The fabric seemed to subtly shift its texture beneath my fingertips, and when I tentatively sat on it, it didn't just support me, it seemed to subtly embrace me, molding itself to my form with an unnerving, invasive intimacy, as if attempting to absorb me. I recoiled, the sensation deeply unsettling, like being hugged by something living, something that understood my shape intimately. Hours, or perhaps only moments, bled into each other in this temporal anomaly. Time itself seemed to warp and stretch, elastic and unreliable. Hunger, a primal gnawing, finally asserted itself. My steps, almost against my will, drew me back to the kitchen. On the counter, the very mug I'd seen moments ago now held a steaming liquid. It smelled exactly like the strong, dark coffee I'd craved that morning. Hesitantly, my hand trembling, I lifted it. The warmth seeped into my fingers, a familiar comfort that felt like a betrayal. I took a tentative sip. It tasted perfect. Exactly as I remembered. But as I drank, I noticed the liquid subtly swirling within the mug, as if alive, and the mug itself seemed to sigh contentedly in my grip, a faint, satisfied tremor running through it. A profound sense of unease, coupled with an almost irresistible lethargy, washed over me. Was this sustenance, or another insidious method of entrapment? I began to notice subtler manifestations of its influence. The pervasive humming grew louder, more insistent, whenever I approached what felt like a potential exit, a subtle discouragement. The colors of the replicated room seemed to shift subtly, their vibrancy mirroring my own emotional state. They became warm and inviting when a flicker of hope ignited within me, and dull, suffocating, and claustrophobic when despair threatened to consume me. The air itself seemed to whisper, not with discernible words, but with potent suggestions, with primal feelings. Stay, rest, it's safe here, you belong, you are home. One door, instead of leading to another familiar room, opened into a space that was a meticulous recreation of my childhood bedroom. Every toy, every poster, every worn-out stuffed animal, all were there, rendered with heartbreaking accuracy. Even a faint scent of bubblegum, a scent I hadn't encountered in years, seemed to linger in the air. It was designed to evoke nostalgia, comfort, a powerful emotional bait. But the deeper I looked, the more wrong it felt. The dolls, propped on shelves, seemed to watch me with unervingly lifelike eyes. The familiar wallpaper pattern, a whimsical design of cartoon animals, seemed to writhe and shift just at the edges of my vision, their smiles twisting into something menacing. This wasn't a memory, it was a carefully constructed trap, designed to ensnare me with the warmth of my past. Desperation finally clawed its way through the imposed calm, a raw, animalistic need for escape. I started to lash out, my movements wild, kicking at the seamless walls, shouting into the suffocating, all-encompassing air. My voice, usually resonant, sounded weak, muffled, immediately absorbed by the yielding surfaces. There was no echo, no reverberation, just a dull, wet thud, as if I were shouting into a giant, fleshy ear that chose not to hear. Then, I stumbled upon something truly different. Not a replication of my house, but a profound absence. A space where the oppressive yellow, pulsating walls simply ceased, giving way to an absolute, inky blackness. It felt not just empty, but actively cold, utterly devoid of any warmth or familiarity, a void that felt more real, more honest, than the saccharine, all-encompassing embrace of this mimicked reality. It wasn't trying to seduce me with comfort, it was a raw, primal threat, an emptiness that felt like it was trying to consume me. A primal fear, deeper and more ancient than anything I had experienced so far, seized me. As I recoiled from the precipice of this void, the familiar door to my kitchen flickered. The diffuse luminescence intensified, the sweet, overripe scent grew stronger, almost overpowering. It was offering me solace, offering me an escape back to the illusion of my life, a place to belong, a perfect replica of my home. But the void, the absolute absence of anything recognizable, felt more truthful, more primal, than the saccharine, all-encompassing embrace of this mimicked reality. I understood then, with a chilling clarity that cut through the haze of confusion. This wasn't a dream. It wasn't a hallucination. This was a place that consumed, mimicked, and assimilated. It fed on familiarity, on comfort, on despair, all to keep its captives from realizing the truth. There was no way out. The house, the rooms, the objects, they were just the intricate bait. The true trap was the illusion of home, the seductive promise of belonging, designed to lull you into a permanent, passive existence within its living flesh. I was in a prison constructed from my own perceived reality, a parasitic organism that had absorbed my house, my memories, my very sense of self, and was now offering me a comfortable, eternal captivity. The hum intensified, a seductive, hypnotic lullaby. I sank to the yielding floor, the sweet, cloying scent overwhelming my senses, the pale yellow walls closing in, a final, suffocating embrace. The fight was over. It had kept me.